The theater buzzed with excitement as hundreds of people filled their seats, unaware that a tiny Filipino orphan was about to change the entire atmosphere of the night. Althea stood backstage, her fingers tangled nervously around the microphone, her heart pounding so hard she could almost hear it over the crowd. She had dreamed of singing on a huge stage all her life, but now that she was actually here, she felt the weight of every moment that had ever hurt her. Every night she cried alone in the orphanage, every memory she never got to share with her parents. A stagehand called her name softly, and she stepped forward like she was stepping into her future. When the spotlight hit her face, she blinked against the brightness, looking so small and fragile that even the judges softened. Simon asked her who she was and why she was there, and her voice trembled as she answered. But the moment the music began, everything inside her transformed. The fear melted away, replaced by the raw, aching strength of a child who had learned to survive by turning her pain into melody. Her first note sent a chill rippling through the audience. People stopped whispering. Phones stopped recording. It was as if her voice froze time itself. She sang as if the world depended on it, letting every emotion spill out: loss, longing, hope, and the kind of strength only an orphan could understand. When she hit her high notes, even the judges were stunned silent. By the time she reached her last word, the entire audience rose to their feet. The applause thundered across the theater while Simon stared at her like he had just discovered something impossible. The judges gave her 4 yeses without hesitation, and when she walked backstage, she burst into tears, hugging her foster guardian tightly. She came to the stage alone, but she walked away knowing she was no longer unseen. She was a rising star. Within 2 days of her audition airing, the world couldn't stop talking about her. Clips of her performance traveled all over social media, and people in the USA, the Philippines, and dozens of other countries reacted with tears, praise, and admiration. She had been an unknown orphan 1 week earlier, and now she had become a global sensation. News channels replayed her audition on morning shows, TikTok creators posted emotional reaction videos, and fans around the world shared comments about how her story touched their hearts. But with all the excitement swirling around her, Althea kept her focus where it belonged, on the music. She still practiced in her small bedroom in her foster home, using the same old headphones she'd carried since she was a child. There was nothing fancy about her setup, but she didn't need anything fancy. She just needed heart. She taped handwritten quotes on the wall above her bed: "Your voice is your gift. Pain can turn into purpose. Sing like someone is listening." Even though the internet now called her the viral Filipino angel, she didn't let herself get distracted. She knew the next stage, Judge Cuts, was only days away, and she refused to let the pressure break her. AGT producers called her to tell her she had broken engagement records for young contestants, but she didn't brag. She simply smiled, whispered a thank you, and went right back to rehearsing. For the first time in her life, people weren't just seeing an orphan girl, they were seeing a fighter. And deep inside, Althea finally felt something she had never truly felt before. She felt worthy of being loved, worthy of being heard, and worthy of every dream she once thought she could never reach. The Judge Cuts round arrived faster than Althea expected, and with it came a new wave of pressure she had never felt before. The theater felt bigger, the lights brighter, and the judges somehow more intimidating this time. She stood backstage clutching the small silver bracelet her late mother had once worn, the only thing she had left from her past. Her foster guardian squeezed her shoulder gently before she walked out, whispering, "You belong on that stage." When she stepped onto the platform, the audience murmured softly, recognizing the little orphan girl who had shocked the world with her audition. She gave a shy smile, still adjusting to the fact that thousands of people now knew her name. As the music began, she closed her eyes and let herself remember the lonely nights in the orphanage when singing was the only thing that made her feel less alone. Her voice entered the room like a fragile whisper, trembling at first, then slowly blooming with warmth and power. The first verse carried the quiet ache of a child trying to piece together memories she barely had. But as she moved into the chorus, something in her ignited. Her voice rose with a strength that made the judges sit forward. The entire hall grew silent, captivated by the sound of pure emotion pouring from someone so young. She cracked on one note, but instead of falling apart, she pushed harder, turning that crack into one of the most emotional moments of the night. When she finished, there was a beat of stillness before the room erupted. Heidi wiped her tears, calling it the most moving performance of the season, and Simon said he admired Althea's bravery because she sang with honesty, not perfection. Backstage, she waited anxiously for the results, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Hours felt like days until the judges finally returned to announce the acts moving forward. When her name was called, she gasped and covered her face with both hands as the audience cheered loudly. The relief washed over her so intensely that her knees nearly gave out. She advanced, not because she was a viral star, but because she earned her place through heart and grit. The quarterfinals brought a new kind of fear. This time, it wasn't just the judges who would decide, it was America. Knowing millions of people would be watching her live made her stomach twist with nerves. She arrived at the studio early that week, practicing every morning until her voice grew warm and steady. The production team helped design a performance that reflected her story, setting her on a circular platform surrounded by gentle blue lights meant to symbolize the ocean separating her from the memories of her parents. She wore a light pastel dress that made her look delicate but strong, like a small flame in the middle of a dark room. When the show began, her hands trembled behind her back, but once the music filled the air, she let everything else fade away. Her first note floated softly through the theater, catching the audience off guard. Then she built her voice slowly, layering more and more power into each line until she hit a high note so clear and steady that the entire room gasped. Social media lit up instantly, with fans posting reactions in real time. The audience stood even before the song ended, cheering so loud she had to hold back tears. Simon smiled proudly and told her, "Tonight, America found its new favorite." When the voting results came the next evening, the host read her name at the top of the leaderboard. She clutched her chest, overwhelmed, as her foster guardian hugged her tightly. For the first time, she truly believed she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was rising. The week of the semi-finals felt heavier than anything Althea had ever experienced. Every morning she woke up with the same mix of fear and determination twisting inside her. Producers had told her quietly that she had already broken multiple AGT engagement records for someone her age, but she didn't let it go to her head. She didn't want to be famous for just one viral moment, she wanted to prove she belonged on that stage. Rehearsals were intense. Vocal coaches pushed her to hit notes she wasn't sure she could reach, while stage designers created a setup meant to match the emotional depth of her chosen song. She picked a soulful ballad that demanded both power and vulnerability, a song that could either elevate her to the finals or expose every weakness she had. On the night of the show, backstage felt like a different universe. Contestants paced nervously while producers hurried around checking every detail. Althea stood alone for a moment, her tiny hands clasping each other as she whispered a prayer, asking God to steady her voice and calm her spirit. When her name was called, she walked out with trembling legs but a brave face. The crowd greeted her with warm applause, already rooting for her. As the lights dimmed and the first soft notes of the song played, Althea took a deep breath and poured her entire heart into the opening line. Her voice sounded fragile, almost breakable, but as she stepped forward, the strength inside her began to shine. She lifted her chin and let the emotions flow through every lyric, her voice rising and falling with stunning control. Halfway through the performance, she delivered a run so clean and powerful that even Simon raised his eyebrows in shock. The climax of the song arrived, and she belted the final note with everything she had. The entire audience rose instantly. Sophia wiped her eyes, saying she sang like a girl who carried a universe of emotions, and Howie said she performed as if she had nothing left to lose. Backstage, she cried into her foster guardian's arms, overwhelmed by the reaction. When the voting results came in and she saw her name at the very top, she covered her face, unable to believe it. America didn't just like her, America believed in her. And that changed everything. The grand finale arrived like a dream she wasn't sure she deserved, but she walked into it with a quiet strength she didn't have at the beginning of her journey. The entire world seemed to be watching her now. Press from multiple countries filled the audience, and social media buzzed with predictions about whether the little Filipino orphan could actually take home the championship. She chose a powerful anthem for her final performance, something that represented her entire life: pain, hope, loss, and the courage to rise again. In her dressing room, she looked at herself in the mirror wearing a long white dress the wardrobe team had chosen for her. It made her look like she had stepped out of a storybook, glowing softly under the warm lights. She thought of her parents, the ones she barely remembered, and whispered, "I hope you're watching." When she stepped onto the stage, the audience fell perfectly silent. The orchestra behind her lifted the melody gently, and Althea began to sing with a voice that felt wiser than her age. Every word sounded like a piece of her story. The crowd leaned forward as if afraid to miss a single breath. Then came the high note, the one she practiced hundreds of times, the note she feared the most. She hit it flawlessly, long, strong, and trembling with emotion. When she ended the song, the room exploded. Judges stood. The audience roared. Simon placed his hand over his heart, an expression of genuine admiration on his face. When the final votes were announced and her name was called as the winner, she froze in disbelief. Then she dropped to her knees, crying as gold confetti rained over her. She wasn't just an orphan anymore. She was the AGT champion, the girl who came from nothing and rose to everything.